Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Saturday, May 18th, 2024. This is kind of the late show. We're doing it about 8:30 p.m. on Saturday evening here on the West Coast in Southern California. We were busy all day. We had some things come up which kept me away from recording, but I wanted to bring these stories to you because there is one in particular, the one we're going to lead off with, that's huge, and we're going to have ramifications of it. We'll be talking about it again tomorrow morning when we do our next breaking news on the 19th. But here's the headline. Benny Gantz calls on the prime minister to deliver war strategy. He sets June 8th as a coalition exit deadline. Now, he's one of the war cabinet ministers, and he is ahead of this party that's actually right now, if they had an election, theoretically, they'd get more seats than Netanyahu and the Likud party. And therefore, he could probably be the next prime minister. Here's what's happened. War cabinet minister claims personal and political considerations have started to infiltrate the holy of holies of Israel's security. That's his words. He outlined 6 objectives, including post-war Gaza plan and military service blueprint. National Unity Party leader Benny Gantz issued an ultimatum to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Saturday evening, stating that his party will leave the government if the cabinet does not approve a comprehensive war strategy by June 8th. Remember, Netanyahu keeps putting it off, saying we've got to finish off Hamas first. Gans said this: "It is my duty to tell the public the truth after repeatedly stating it behind closed doors. Personal and political considerations have started to infiltrate the holy of holies of Israel's security, and a small minority has taken control of the command bridge," Gantz said at a press conference. All right, this is really big because, like we've talked about before, the infighting with the Israeli politics, the government here, and eventually they're going to make an agreement. We know from the book of Daniel, a covenant, a pact with the final Antichrist, basically probably to allow them a peace covenant, to allow them possibly to build their third temple. But the point is they really can't get their act together. They've always had this problem, and they've got it right now. This committee formed right after the October 7th massacre to bring the country together to unify it. But now Gantz has broken off from that and said, no, you got to come up with some type of plan by June 8th, or else we're leaving the government. And Lord only knows what's going to happen then, as if Israel didn't have enough problems being attacked from about 7 different sides. So we'll pick up that story again tomorrow, but wanted to bring it to you tonight. And now we got a couple of Russian stories. In fact, 3 of them. Remember, Russia was our big story today about how Putin is going to have a war that seems never ending there in the Ukraine. Well, now we have a second headline. Russia accuses the U.S. of playing with fire in Ukraine, warns of a proxy war. See, Russia's sights are on the United States here. Top Russian diplomat accuses Western countries of being led by Gopniks, GOPniks, slang for violent, petty criminals, that's, I guess, a Russian word, and fashionistas, and assert that NATO is the root of all conflict in Europe, but stop short of examining Russia's own role in the war. Russia Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov has a long list of complaints against the United States for political incompetence, provocation, to rewriting history, and to causing nuclear brinkmanship. Russia is innocent of these crimes, apparently, but America's Western allies are mindlessly fashionistas, dancing to the mood music coming from Washington, whatever it might be, the politician rail. So, in other words, he's basically going after the U.S. and Joe Biden and warning them about don't fight some type of proxy war where the U.S. is actually fighting the war against Russia through Ukraine and through the money they give, the billions of dollars they give. Now, again, it goes to what we talked about earlier today, that the U.S. is seen as weak, is seen as not trustworthy. So, again, Russia can say things like this, and it will fall on deaf ears maybe in the U.S., but the enemies of the U.S. will take heart to this. Again, Russia combating the U.S. And so Russia in the headlines. Russia again, headline number 3. European Union bans more Russian media outlets over disinformation. How do you know how to believe them, when to believe them? European Union on Friday banned 4 more Russian media outlets from broadcasting in the 27-nation bloc for what it called the spread of propaganda about the invasion of Ukraine and disinformation as the EU heads into parliamentary elections in 3 weeks. The latest batch of broadcasters consists of Voice of Europe, RIA Novosti, Izvestia, and Rossiyskaya Gazeta, I guess I pronounced that right, which the U.S. claimed are all under the control of the Kremlin. It said in a statement that the 4 in particular are targeting European political parties, especially during election periods. Belgium already last month opened an investigation into suspected Russian interference in June's Europe-wide elections, saying the country's intelligence service has confirmed the existence of a network trying to undermine support for Ukraine. Because that's going to be big. How are the EU's going to vote? What are they going to vote? Are they going to vote for continuous support for Ukraine or something against it? So you've got this disinformation from Russia. And the article goes on to say, since the war started in February 2022, the EU has already suspended Russia Today and Sputnik, among several other outlets. So they're hard at it. Again, Russia is the country that's going to be in control. The Ezekiel 38-39 invasion. They're the only country in the Middle East. Putin's the only leader that speaks to every single country, has a relationship with all of them, Israel, Hamas, whoever it might be. And so they are the ones to be considered, and they're not in the war yet. This is not Ezekiel 38-39, like we said. Now, here's a headline you might have heard of, and some people maybe have gotten crazy with it. This is NOTAM. It sparked confusion today over possible Russian hypersonic missile test off where? Right off our coast in Southern California. This is from Zero Hedge. There's been quite a stir on X, formerly Twitter, as some users speculate that NOTAM, or Aviation Notice to Airmen, that's what it stands for, an Aviation Notice to Airmen, suggests that a potential Russian Navy hypersonic missile test off the coast of Southern California was going to take place or had taken place. However, that's not the case, according to the website The War Zone. The NOTAM is actually in anticipation of a Russian space booster splashing down in the Pacific. So anyway, what had happened was somebody got the story that a Russian missile was going to be tested off the California coast, their hypersonic missile we've talked about before. And the posts collectively have generated over 1 million views just today. So we thought we'd bring that up. Now, so according to Zero Hedge and this group, The War Zone, that's not what's happening. Well, if something happens over the Southern California and our coast, which we live in Southern California, not too far from the coast, we will let you know. Now, one other story here. Headline 5, U.S. boosts intelligence sharing with Israel. On Monday, the Washington Post reported that the U.S. was offering Israel new intelligence to help track down Hamas leaders in exchange for Israel not launching the assault on Rafah. In other words, we'll give you information, intelligence on these Hamas leaders. If you won't attack Rafah, it won't go into great going in with a great incursion. In other words, a very strong military might in there. And that's what they're doing right now. By the way, the fighting has really gotten pretty wild so far, and it's getting worse. We'll be talking about that in the morning. But anyway, here's what I want to get to. The report was carried by some Israeli news outlets under the title U.S. withholding sensitive information. We talked about it here. They seem to be withholding it. In other words, if you don't go into Rafah and do this terrible thing, which would cause a humanitarian disaster, then we'll tell you where Sinwar is and the leader so you can kill them and get your hostages back. All right. Okay. That was supposedly they're withholding sensitive intelligence about Hamas from Israel. However, several current and former U.S. and Arab diplomats, as well as defense and intelligence officials, said it was highly unlikely that the U.S. purposely would withhold information on Hamas from Israel. And so this could be the truth of the story. We don't know. The Washington Post may have had a misstory here. They're the one who reported it. And so Israeli sources took it up and misunderstood it. So we're not sure on that, because one of the things that was the big headline is that Joe Biden was withholding information about where Sinwar is. He's the leader of Hamas there, one of the tunnels probably, and some of the leaders and the hostages. And he's withholding it to use it as a, the old carrot, here it is. If you don't go into Rafah, then we'll give you the information. We'll let you know where the hostages are, where Sinwar is. That doesn't seem like a true story now, because they haven't been looking for Hamas. The U.S., and as the article says, Hamas wasn't really on their radar until the October 7th attack, because they were the group that was basically, although they're a designated terrorist organization, they were ruling Gaza, an impoverished area, and they're never considered a major threat to the U.S., so they wouldn't have this intelligence that Israel would not have had. So we basically want to clear up that story. It doesn't seem like the United States gave that ultimatum saying, look, if you want to know where the hostages are, if you want to know where Sinwar is, then don't go into Rafah. That doesn't seem to be the case. So we want to clear that up. Anyway, stories keep on coming. The big one, we'll deal with it again tomorrow. Gantz says, okay, you got a couple of weeks. You let us know your outline of what you're going to do after the war, or our party leaves the government. And again, people, this is huge. So we'll talk about that again in the morning. Until then, I should say good night, about my bedtime, 8:30, because 4 a.m. comes early. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. Until tomorrow morning, may the Lord richly, richly bless.